What the world? What is that?
On July 9, 2015, pilot James Rourke was making a routine supply run when he captured 17 photographs that would become the most analyzed Bigfoot evidence in history. But those images were just the beginning of a most bizarre discovery ever found in Alaska's wilderness. Captain James Rourke had been flying Alaska's wilderness for 26 years without questioning what lived in the endless forests below. At 51, he was former Air Force, methodical, skeptical of anything that couldn't be proven by science or experience. His reputation among Alaska's bush pilot community was legendary. If you needed supplies delivered to an impossible location, James Rourke could get them there. He'd logged over 15,000 flight hours across Alaska's most remote regions, flying in conditions that would ground commercial aircraft. Working out of Talkeetna, he flew supplies to remote research stations, mining camps, and hunting lodges using his de Havilland Beaver float plane. His clients included geological teams, wildlife biologists, and occasionally government researchers conducting studies in areas so remote that satellite imagery couldn't provide adequate detail. At 9:47 a.m. on July 9, 2015, flying at 2,500 feet 35 miles southwest of Denali, Rourke spotted movement near a glacial meltwater stream. The location was in one of the most remote areas of the Alaska Range, over 30 miles from the nearest road. His first thought, grizzly bear during salmon season. But as he descended to 1,800 feet for a better look, what he saw defied every category his experienced mind could understand. The creature stood completely upright on two legs near the water's edge. Not the temporary stance bears sometimes adopt, but natural, comfortable bipedal posture. Even from 1,800 feet, Rourke could see this was massive. At least 8 feet tall with proportions like a giant ape, but scaled far beyond anything that should exist in nature. The shoulders were incredibly wide, probably 4 feet across, giving the creature a powerful appearance unlike anything Rourke had seen. The entire body was covered in thick, dark hair that appeared perfectly adapted for Alaska's harsh climate, layered and organized, not the messy fur of a bear. Circling lower to 1,200 feet, his heart pounding, Rourke watched something that would prove this wasn't just an unknown animal. Bigfoot was fishing with systematic precision that was remarkable to observe. Standing motionless for several seconds, apparently watching for movement patterns in the water, then striking with lightning-fast accuracy using both hands independently. This wasn't opportunistic feeding like bears, it was refined hunting technique, showing years of experience. The creature's coordination was perfect, requiring significant brain development. It would assess water conditions and adjust strategy accordingly. Problem-solving behavior indicating intelligence far beyond what mainstream science attributed to any unknown primate. As Rourke watched, Bigfoot pulled a 30-pound salmon from the water and processed it with methodical efficiency. Holding the fish with both hands, positioning it carefully to access the most nutritious parts first, then systematically consuming the flesh while organizing waste materials in a deliberate pile. The creature's face, partially visible in profile, even from 1,200 feet, matched Bigfoot descriptions Rourke had always dismissed as fantasy. Flat nose, prominent brow ridge, jutting jaw, all covered in that thick, dark hair. But it was the conscious decision-making evident in every movement that struck him most. Rourke grabbed his camera from the cockpit and began shooting through the side window. His hands were shaking slightly from excitement and the realization that he might be documenting something revolutionary. He forced himself to remain calm and methodical, taking multiple shots from different angles. His first photographs captured Bigfoot in completely natural behavior, unaware of any observation. The creature's obvious comfort suggested this was familiar territory, but what happened next would reveal something far more significant about this creature's capabilities. The creature's head snapped up with startling speed, immediately tracking the aircraft's movement across the sky. The reaction wasn't startled panic, but calculated assessment of a potential threat. For several seconds that felt like hours, man and Bigfoot made direct eye contact across 1,000 feet of empty air. Rourke saw genuine thinking in that amber-eyed stare, calculation, evaluation, and what might have been annoyance at being disturbed during its meal. The creature's eyes seemed to glow slightly, even in bright daylight. This wasn't the wild unpredictability of feral animals. It was measured intelligence. Instead of fleeing in panic like every other animal Rourke had startled, the creature turned deliberately and walked upright toward the tree line 40 yards away. The movement was fluid and natural, showing that bipedal locomotion was this creature's normal method of travel. Within 20 seconds, it had covered the 40 yards to the forest edge with a ground-eating pace that would have challenged human athletes, despite weighing an estimated 600 pounds. But what happened at the forest edge revealed something that suggested this encounter was far from random. Instead of immediately disappearing, Bigfoot stopped and turned back toward the fishing area. The creature began surveying the site with methodical attention that showed sophisticated situational awareness. It was clearly assessing whether its activity had left evidence that might attract attention and whether there were resources that should be retrieved. The salmon remains lay scattered on the rocks. Bigfoot studied them carefully, looking from the fish bones to the circling aircraft and back again. The creature was calculating whether the risk of further exposure was worth retrieving the remaining food. After several seconds of analysis, the creature made a conscious decision to abandon the salmon remains rather than risk additional exposure. The decision appeared based entirely on Rourke's presence. The creature had determined that avoiding further human contact was more important than recovering food resources. Rourke circled the area for another 15 minutes, taking photographs of the landscape and marking GPS coordinates. Something told him this encounter was far from over. When he landed at the research station, Rourke immediately showed photographs to Dr. Sarah Chen, the lead geologist. Dr. Chen was methodical, skeptical, trained to dismiss unproven claims and focus on measurable data. She had 15 years of experience studying geological formations and had developed a reputation for rigorous analysis. But as she examined the images, zooming in on the clearest shots, her scientific doubt began to crumble under compelling visual evidence. Bigfoot was visible in 11 of the 17 photographs, distant but unmistakable to anyone with wildlife identification experience. The creature's body proportions were completely wrong for any known animal, too tall, too humanoid in posture and movement patterns to match any documented North American species. Most compelling was the photographic sequence showing the creature's reaction to the aircraft. The progression from unaware fishing behavior to alert assessment to deliberate withdrawal demonstrated cognitive processing that was genuinely remarkable. The clearest photograph showed Bigfoot in mid-step during its retreat, one leg forward in natural walking motion, arms swinging in rhythm, its massive frame outlined against the white glacier landscape. The image quality was excellent, and the creature's details were sharp enough for scientific analysis. Dr. Chen confirmed this wasn't misidentification or hoax. The proportions were wrong for any known North American mammal. The bipedal locomotion was too natural to be temporary behavior, and the creature's response showed intelligence beyond normal animal awareness. Over the next week, Rourke contacted Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum at Idaho State University, one of the few mainstream scientists willing to examine Bigfoot evidence seriously. Dr. Meldrum's response was encouraging. The images were compelling and behaviorally consistent with other high-quality reports. However, he emphasized that without physical evidence, photographs remained circumstantial. That response prompted Rourke to make a decision that would lead to discoveries no one anticipated. What they found next would prove this creature had been using this area regularly, but the true significance of that discovery wouldn't become clear until much later. On July 18th, 9 days after the original sighting, Rourke returned with Dr. Chen and 2 research assistants equipped with scientific documentation equipment. They hiked 3 miles through challenging terrain to reach the exact fishing location. What they found at the site exceeded every expectation and confirmed this encounter represented something far more significant than chance wildlife observation. Massive footprints pressed deep into muddy banks, measured 18 inches long, 7 inches wide, with clearly defined toe impressions showing 5 distinct toes with toenails rather than claws. The depth suggested enormous weight, at least 600 pounds, but the consistency indicated smooth, controlled movement. The stride length measured over 6 feet consistently, confirming natural bipedal locomotion with remarkable efficiency. Most significantly, the prints showed dermal ridges similar to human fingerprints, microscopic detail that would be virtually impossible to fake, and provided compelling authenticity evidence. Dr. Chen immediately recognized the scientific importance and began documenting everything with methodical precision. The footprints revealed anatomical adaptations fascinating from an evolutionary perspective, engineering for both power and precision, with broad heels providing stability and longer toes offering better grip on uneven terrain. Near the fishing spot, they discovered broken salmon bones arranged in deliberate piles with systematic organization clearly indicating intelligence rather than random feeding behavior. The bones showed bite marks unlike anything in Dr. Chen's experience, too large for human teeth, but showing systematic processing indicating conscious planning. The bone arrangement suggested the creature had specific feeding behaviors beyond simple nutrition. Bones were sorted by size and type, with larger bones at pile bottoms and smaller fragments on top. Organization indicating not just intelligence, but possibly cultural behaviors passed down through learning. But these discoveries were preparation for what they found hidden in dense vegetation near the tree line. The structure was so expertly camouflaged using natural materials and strategic positioning that it was essentially invisible unless you knew exactly what to look for. Branches had been deliberately woven together using complex patterns to create a sheltered area approximately 9 feet wide and 7 feet deep, with additional height accommodating something of Bigfoot's estimated size. The construction demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of structural engineering, including load distribution, weather resistance, and architectural stability remarkable for any non-human species. Larger branches formed a carefully planned framework distributing weight efficiently, while smaller branches were woven through, creating walls providing wind, rain, and snow protection while maintaining ventilation. Construction techniques were unlike anything Dr. Chen had seen in indigenous shelter studies. Weaving patterns were complex and systematic, suggesting not just individual intelligence, but cultural knowledge developed and refined through multiple generations. Inside the structure, ground had been systematically prepared and covered with carefully arranged bedding materials, deliberately selected for comfort, insulation, and moisture resistance. This wasn't a temporary shelter. Wear patterns indicated months or years of regular occupation with ongoing maintenance and systematic improvements. Large clumps of dark hair clung to surrounding tree bark at various heights, caught by repeated passage of something massive moving through the space over extended periods. The hair samples showed evolutionary adaptations for Alaska's climate, more sophisticated than any known mammal, with layered structure providing water resistance and insulation. The structure's location showed remarkable intelligence, positioned for optimal concealment while providing access to the fishing area and multiple escape routes into deep forest. Dr. Chen's team spent over 6 hours systematically documenting every aspect with scientific precision. Hair samples were carefully collected and sealed in sterile containers for DNA analysis. But the DNA analysis results were both frustrating and intriguing. Samples clearly showed primate characteristics, but didn't match any known species in comprehensive scientific databases. The genetic material showed some characteristics similar to human DNA, while others were more similar to other primates, and still others displayed completely unique sequences. The overall genetic pattern suggested something evolutionarily distinct from any known primate lineage, possibly representing a separate branch of hominid evolution that had diverged from common ancestors millions of years ago. Rourke's photographs, combined with comprehensive physical evidence, were compiled into a detailed scientific report. The structure's exact location was kept strictly confidential to prevent disturbance by tourists or amateur researchers who might contaminate the site. But what researchers discovered through systematic monitoring would reveal something that would completely change their understanding of what they had found. Motion-activated cameras were placed at calculated distances around the area, positioned to capture activity without disturbing the creature or alerting it to human surveillance. For 18 months, the structure showed clear signs of continued occupation and regular maintenance, demonstrating remarkable intelligence and systematic planning capabilities. Fresh bedding materials appeared according to seasonal patterns, new hair samples accumulated as older ones weathered naturally, and surrounding areas showed ongoing maintenance, indicating permanent habitation. Camera footage accumulated over 18 months revealed fascinating details about behavior patterns and daily routines. Movement patterns showed the creature was most active during dawn and dusk, when lighting provided optimal concealment from potential observation, with occasional nighttime activity, suggesting comfort operating in complete darkness. Maintenance activities recorded by cameras demonstrated remarkable intelligence and systematic planning. The creature would methodically inspect its shelter, identify areas needing repair, and systematically replace worn materials with carefully selected alternatives matching original construction techniques. The creature's maintenance approach showed understanding of structural engineering principles, weather resistance requirements, and long-term durability. It would test structural element stability, replace materials before complete failure, and make systematic design improvements, enhancing comfort and weather protection. The footage revealed something else that was puzzling to researchers. The creature seemed aware of the cameras and was carefully managing what it revealed to the monitoring equipment. It would position itself to provide glimpses without revealing detailed anatomical information or full capability ranges. This behavior suggested the creature understood it was being watched, but researchers assumed it was simply being cautious around unfamiliar equipment in its territory. Then something happened that would expose the true extent of these creatures' capabilities and finally reveal what Rourke had actually witnessed on that July morning. In late 2016, all detectable activity suddenly ceased completely and permanently. The structure remained perfectly intact with no damage signs or natural deterioration, but no new bedding appeared, no fresh hair samples were found, and cameras detected absolutely no further movement despite optimal weather and continued monitoring. The cessation was as mysterious as everything else about the creature's behavior. There were no environmental disturbance signs or threats that might have driven the creature away, and the shelter remained in perfect condition, suggesting voluntary rather than forced abandonment. But the timing revealed something that changed everything researchers thought they understood about this encounter. The abandonment coincided precisely with increased aircraft activity as mining companies began systematic aerial surveys for potential development projects throughout the region. The correlation suggested the creature had detected this escalation in human presence and made a calculated decision to relocate before exposure became inevitable. This wasn't typical animal flight response based on immediate threat perception or instinctive fear. It was sophisticated strategic withdrawal based on intelligence gathering, threat assessment, and long-term planning that demonstrated awareness of human behavior patterns and their potential consequences for the creature's security and long-term survival. The abandonment revealed that Bigfoot had apparently been systematically monitoring aircraft activity throughout its occupation of the site, learning flight patterns, identifying different types of aircraft and their purposes, and understanding human schedules and behavioral patterns while remaining completely undetected by sophisticated surveillance equipment and systematic human monitoring efforts. The creature had apparently allowed Rourke's initial documentation because it served some unknown purpose in the creature's larger strategic plan, then had systematically withdrawn when continued exposure became too risky for long-term survival and territorial security. This suggested intelligence operating on strategic levels comparable to military planning, risk assessment, and operational security protocols. The timing and manner of the abandonment indicated that the creature had been planning its withdrawal for weeks or possibly months before actually leaving the area, suggesting sophisticated understanding of human behavior patterns, development timelines, and the potential consequences of increased human activity in its established territory. The strategic nature of the withdrawal demonstrated planning capabilities that operated on timescales and complexity levels that challenged human understanding of what was possible for non-human intelligence. The creature had successfully anticipated human development patterns and taken preemptive action to protect its security before threats materialized. Rourke continued flying over Alaska's remote regions with heightened awareness and increasingly sophisticated camera equipment, but never encountered Bigfoot again, despite systematic searches of areas with similar terrain characteristics and environmental conditions. The creature that had revealed itself so dramatically on that July morning had returned to the shadows with the same strategic intelligence it had demonstrated throughout the entire encounter sequence.